You picked wrong. The best race for every class in WoW Midnight. That's right. So there are good race class combos. It's a bit less so these days than previously, say, like a classic WoW where every priest had to be a dwarf. That's not the case anymore. But there are still certainly some biz races for certain specs and classes. Let's get into this one here from Marsalian and Flame.
But Haranir finally make an appearance here. Wait a second, it's too early for that. We need to be talking about the rest of the races first.
I am the best!
Oh,
in World of Warcraft, exploring the coolest options while also looking to find the one that does the most damage is something that people are interested in when it comes to choosing the right race for their class.
That's me!
Actually, dear Vulpera, you do have a class that you excel at.
Really? What is it? What is it?
It's called the Floor Inspector. Get over here! As I was saying, let's explore the best races for each class in WoW, depending on what you are looking for.
Okay, best races for damage. All right, let's see.
I do the best DPS with big and heavy weapons.
And I excel at intellect-based classes requiring spells and the power of the mind.
Not quite, you guys. Actually, I'll fix this right now. That's better.
A warlock?
Just to clarify, for everyone looking to choose their race to maximize their DPS, the potential gains are very, very small.
There are
the difference between your best...
There are certain races that I just associate with certain classes. Yeah, sure. Orc could definitely go warlock. I also associate with being warriors all the time. Gnomes, definitely magic-based classes. I always think of mages, also probably warlocks. And then the dwarfs... I would say dwarfs, I still associate them with priests. I don't know what it is from back then. But also dwarfs, I do see them as warriors, paladins, like melee listed classes. Elves, all the elven races can be hunters just by default because Legolas, you know, that's what I see them as. And I think they do. I think specifically night elf hunters, man, I remember there was a best in slot way to kill Horde as a night elf hunter.
Let us lay waste to this realm.
Shokes, thank you for the follow, man. Welcome to our Scourge. Or I should say Chaox, I think is the name. Basically what we got...
Let us lay waste to
Bruno,
this
thank you for the
realm.
sub on YouTube. Basically what you used to be able to do with Night Elf Hunters is you could shadow meld, right? Use their specific racial ability in a forest, right? You see a Hordy boy, you shadow meld, and then you could pull back your aim shot and basically like get them halfway killed or almost killed by pulling back that aim shot, letting it charge up while you're shadow melded, and then launching that shit at people. Especially if you were higher level than them. Man, that was some great one-shot days back then. Sub pre-watch, it was up, Bill. Josh.
Possible race, and your worst possible race is usually about 1% or the equivalent value of an eye level. The races also kind of change with expansions. For instance, Dragonflight saw dwarves and torrents have some of the highest DPS potential with their crit damage ratios. The War Within had a resurgence in mecha gnomes, while Midnight, well, we'll get to it. Also, whatever stats your spec wants makes a big difference as well. Certain ratios fuel your crit values, like the ones I just mentioned. Others help with haste, like the trolls, giving you access to berserking. Actually, prior to Dragonflight, trolls used to...
I'm just going to put it out there right now. Best race in the game, humans. Best race in the game. Till this day. I always will. I'll be a human forever. In real life and in the game. That's just how I roll.
Be kings, especially for classes like Unholy Death Knights. The added 10% haste was huge for a lot of expansions in a row. Recently, the value between main stat and secondary stats has been skewed, and the available loot can also influence it as well. So if it is poor in one area that a race can cover, that race usually ends up being a better choice. Again, all of this to say that the difference is tiny. As of the most recent data and simulations that have been done by websites such as Blood Mallet, this is what the best race class combo we have looks like.
Oh wow.
I'll leave this on the screen for a bit so you can check it out, because there are 40 specs in the game, minus the 7 healers that don't have data on DPS, with a total of 26 races. Talking about all of this would take days and days, so I'll just mention the standouts real quick. Pandaren is the clear winner. What? Pandaren is the clear winner.
That's a shocker.
I mean, that's what it says. Pandaren is the official best race for all of these specs you see on the screen right now.
What?
There are some close
Pandaren are the best Death Knights. That's crazy. What the hell? All 3 specs. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to race change to Pandaren? Screw that. I can't do it.
second contenders, but mainly the jolly round folks have taken the win in Midnight.
Best
The only
mages.
real racial that Pandarans have that has any impact upon damage output is the Epicurean
By the way, behind the chat box here at the very bottom, it's Protection Warrior is also down here. So there you go.
have that has any impact upon damage output is the Epicurean trait. This doubles the stats any food gives you. This is not a new trait, yet Pandarans are for the first time the most popular DPS race that I have seen in recent years in terms of performance. Again, this is due to Sims, and again, the difference between the number 1 and number 2 specs are in the degree of 100 to 200 or 300 DPS, which is nothing when you end up encounters with over 100,000 DPS. This could mean, however, that food buffs relative to other buffs and every other DPS ratio scales way more in Midnight to the point of pushing this race out there. For some of these specs, you can opt for a second choice.
That's crazy. So because they're good at eating food, they're the best in the game. I didn't even know that stat existed. I had no idea that if pandas eat, they get that 100% boost on top of that. That's pretty good.
Like Dark Iron Dwarf, which is a second for Frost Death Knight and Arcane Mage, but also a main race choice for Protection and Retribution Paladins.
I like Dark
Their
Irons.
racial
I think
Fire
they're cool.
Blood gives them a big chunk of main stat on a 2-minute cooldown. The racial also has other, more important benefits, but more on that on our next category. The second most popular race in terms of raw DPS gain will
Pandas can be everything except DKs, druids, and paladins. They can be DKs. They can. That changed, yeah. No, they can. Obviously, he just said they're the best DKs, actually, all 3.
be Mechanome, and it will shine the most for all of these DPS specs that you see.
Mechanome
Their racial
robes.
in combat analysis gives them scaling main stats. Also, Mechanomes were the guys that were simming the most for War Within in terms of best race for DPS gains for a lot of specs. Just
That's hilarious. They're simming the most. I mean, that's so Mechanome to be like the best at simming. Of course they would be.
the FYI, which means pandas are just one bad day from being number 2. What's interesting is that Mechanomes and Pandarans have some crossover with the same specs. Frost Mage, Brewmaster, Affliction Warlock, and Protection Warrior all favor both of these 2 races at the same time. Some are better in AoE, some are better in single target, and some just have close to no difference in performance between Pandaran and Mechanomes. Moving on to the third best overall race for DPS, it's actually a tie between Dark Iron Dwarfs and Orcs. We already talked about the Short Kings, so for Orcs you want these specs. Blood Fury increases either your attack power
Beast
or your
Mastery
intellect by
Hunter.
the same numerical amount. On paper, intellect sounds better than attack power, since attack power is kind of like a secondary stat in
Wait,
that
orcs are best fire mages? Shaman, I thought for sure there'd be some shaman specs for orcs. I'm surprised by the fire mage.
it gets increased by your main stat, aka strength or agility in this case, while intellect is the main stat. Maybe that's why we see fire mage and elemental shaman favor orcs quite a bit. But for demonology and beast mastery, there is an extra racial that sees orcs supreme, and that is command. 1% pet damage is actually likely the most valuable part of this race, considering how much actual raw pet damage these bad boys do. To be fair,
And it kind of makes sense in the lore too. You know, I just think of orcs walking around with their wolves all the time. So I mean, this makes sense.
honorable mention for elemental shaman is dwarf, the regular kind. Regular dwarfs have Might of the Mountain that increases their crit damage and healing by 2%. The interesting part is that Taurens have the same racial, only renamed into Brawn, but Taurens
Okay.
sim 90 DPS lower. Well, 90 DPS. So really, any spec that likes dwarves will probably like Taurens just as much, so long as it is played by both of these races. Dwarves are also the best for marksmanship and survival hunter, likely for the same reason we just discussed, and again, they are tied with Tauren for the same specializations. Actually,
Shocker.
dwarves and Taurens are tied for the 4th place with trolls, void elves, and night elves, since all of these races excel for 3 specs each. Trolls really want to be played by druids, particularly the non-healer kind. Trolls have Berserking, a 3-minute racial that gives them 10% haste for 12 seconds. 3-minute cooldowns have kind of fallen out of favor in the last expansions, which is why we don't really see Trolls as kings in terms of race representation for DPS anymore. Night Elf also excels at Druid, but only Feral and Guardian, at least when it comes to DPS performance.
Which is why Guardian Druid right now and probably Night Elves are popping off. Because Guardian Druid's so damn good right now. I'm sure there's a lot of people who made Night Elves.
Night Elves have Touch of a Loon, a passive that gives you 1% haste if it's nighttime, or 1% crit if it's daytime in the game.
Is that real? This is really based on the night and day cycles of the game? That's insane. I had no idea this even existed. I mean, racials are like the last thing I look at. I pick a race just based on aesthetic. The yes, Sam, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm actually going to straight up say that's pretty damn cool. That it's based on the light cycles of the day. Old tech, server hop, yeah. Just stay in the night all the time. Like, just keep server hopping all the time so you can remain in the night. Interesting.
These stats cycle over the course of the day, and since they're not bad stats at all, this makes a lot of sense as to why Night Elf is good. But Night Elves trade their balanced synergy for another caster, the poster child of Midnight, Devourer. Making these segues is actually kind of fun. Kind of makes me think what other segues we can make for this video. That would also be fun. Not sure. Can't really put my finger on it. Anyway, a segue that I can think about is the overlap of best races for Devourer.
Yeah, Devourer.
One of them is Night Elf, as we've established, but the other one is Night Elf's contender in Void Elf, the newly acquired race for the Demon Hunter class, and yes, Void Elf is king for all Demon Hunter specs, with Blood Elf making a slight appearance on Havoc occasionally. Since Demon Hunters only have 3 race choices, this is not a very interesting conversation, but it has its charm when you notice that only Vengeance wants Void Elf at all times, while the other 2 are less discriminatory. And with Blood Elf being last on this list, we are done! An honorable mention goes to Drakthir for Evokers and nobody else. Their DPS racial is Awakened and it gives you 1% mastery. I suppose that is a
This is one race that I expect to get a buff at some point. When they opened them up to all their classes, I don't know, Blizzard thought there's more scaly lovers out there than there actually were, but Drakthir are significantly, like by a large margin, one of the least played races in the game. By a large margin. And people thought that, oh, maybe that's because, they could only be one class at that point, but now they can be a bunch, and they're still like that. So I imagine these guys are going to get a buff at some point.
Hard stat to quantify since mastery translates into different amounts for each spec in particular, and I'm not entirely sure how this works. Do people get a numerical 1% mastery added to whatever their current mastery percentage is? Does it add 1% of the currently equipped mastery rating, whatever that amounts into actual mastery percentage, on your character sheet? Blizzard is the only one that knows. Probably. As for healers, we don't actually have the data on the best race in terms of DPS output, since healer DPS rotation is not something any healer optimizes anything DPS around, to be fair, and it kind of changes and it's very subjective. A good rule to follow that we recommend is to choose the race that's the best option for your DPS counterpart of that class. Chances are, if you do any content that wants you to deal damage, say like solo content, you'll have a better time swapping to your DPS spec anyway. Otherwise, whatever is cooler.
That's how I pick, whatever's cooler.
Or whatever gives you more survivability, because
best race for survivability.
What if damage isn't just your goal? What if you want to avoid becoming a rug?
Has he mentioned human for anything yet? Level 69, that's clever. I haven't seen humans yet. Where are the humans at? It's the best race in the game. What the hell's going on here?
There are a few races that have a bit of tankiness baked into their ratios, but really nothing compares to dwarves and dark iron dwarves. Stoneform and Fireblood are probably the strongest dispels in the game, particularly because they get rid of bleeds. Bleeds are a source of high damage taken by the player, and they are the hardest to remove. First of all, no baseline dispel in the game can remove them. Certain classes like Evokers can and will talent into Cauterizing Flame, a 1-minute cooldown dispel that works on a bunch of things, primarily used for bleeds. Paladins can remove bleeds with a 5-minute cooldown.
I just realized Cauterizing Flame stopping bleeds is because they're cauterizing the wound. Wow. That makes sense. What the hell? Why'd I never think of that? Interesting. No way. Yeah, it makes sense, right?
In Blessing of Protection. Because bleeds are
Good work,
hard to
Holmes,
remove,
yeah.
Blizzard likely uses them to more easily tune damage intake for groups, knowing that they will likely won't be able to remove the bleeds. That also makes bleed removal even stronger
You're
when
welcome,
it's
Beth,
used.
you're welcome.
A second overlooked choice in races for survivability is Night Elf with their Shadow Meld racial.
I
This
love
is a
Shadow
little
Meld.
trickier to exploit and a bit more abstract. Shadow Meld drops you from combat most of the time.
Shadow Meld used to be way more powerful than it is now. They nerfed the shit out of Shadow Meld. Classic version of Shadow Meld was so OP, man.
But more importantly, makes your enemy that is focusing you no longer able to see and target you. You can reset fixates and mechanics with this in the same way mages do with their greater invisibility, hunters with their feign death, or more famously, rogues with vanish. Of course, if you play any of these classes with a Night Elf, you have access to double combat resets, making you elusive as all hell.
Right.
You can consider
Utility.
Shadow Meld to be a utility racial if you want, and you would be right, but let's talk about some other kinds of utility, like the Tauren War Stomp, an actual crowd control. To be fair, these days, most classes have a form of an AoE stun, and all of them
Did they change the name? Wasn't it Thunder Stomp? I know there's Thunder Clap. There's also abilities to cheat clap, maybe. But I thought it was, for some reason, I thought it was Thunder Stomp. And they changed it at some point. I don't know. I'm just talking about the old version of this.
are better than War Stomp. Since crowd
Thundercock?
control
I
has
don't think
diminishing
that's what it's
returns,
called.
adding another one provides less and less value. But if you play a Druid, for instance, a rare case of a class with no AoE stun, then War Stomp becomes a boon of desirable crowd control. Kultirans have a Haymaker, a hilarious single-target punch that knocks enemies away and stunning them for 3 seconds.
What? That's cool.
The effect is actually really good, but the downside of having a 2.5 minute cooldown likely doesn't push people to play Kultirans for that reason. High Mountain Torrents have Bull Rush, where they can charge forward and knock enemies down, and yes, this sounds like something regular Torrents should have, but High Mountains have much more impressive horns, so it makes more sense,
Sure.
okay? Also, High Mountains are really good for blood decay.
You know what I'm realizing? Humans kind of got the short end of the stick on their racials. What the hell? These are a lot of cool racials, man. What do we got? Double Hearthstone? We have no place like home. Because they took away diplomacy from humans, because as they started to make reputation gains like more and more part of the game with renown tracks and all this other shit, they realized, well, humans have an edge over everybody else because they have diplomacy, and which was a big gain on any rep you got in the game. So they removed it. They changed it. Now we have no place like home, which means your Hearthstone has 2 charges. What the hell? Why does everyone else get this cool shit?
A famously very movement impaired spec.
Will to
Utility can
survive?
extend
Yeah,
outside
good for
combat as
PvP.
well. Worgans and Draktyrs have racials that can let them be their own mounts, despite Draktyrs clearly being superior. Well, Draktyrs also have Wing Buffet to push enemies away in a similar way Druids do with Typhoons. And I don't care what you think, that's exactly how I'm going to pronounce that. Earthens also get a mention here for their Wide-Eyed Wonder racial, where their experience gain from exploring new zones is increased by 200%.
Damn, that's a cool one too for leveling. Rep gains were broken for years though. I know they were. I remember like you guys remember in Burning Crusade we had to pick like Elder and Scryers, and yes, I do remember humans had an edge there, and that had to do with some power progression because you could get some gear and stuff. That was important, and yeah, humans got that quicker than anyone.
Actually, this racial is so good, it is right now the fastest way to level a character from level 10 to 80.
So
Stack
Earthen are
this
best for
buff with
leveling.
War Mode and other experience buffs, and you can simply level a new character in a few hours simply by just flying around. But the coolest, most awesomest, clearly unbiased racial in the game has to be the Dark Iron Mole Machine. This is also Blizzard's biggest
that's
ever
cool.
committed crime, in that we just don't have more Mole Machine points throughout Azeroth and beyond. What this does is it just lets you teleport around the world to already explored and discovered Mole Machine places. That's going to be really helpful in the Last Titan, since Northrend already has 2 existing locations already. I'm not saying we will
Honestly,
get
it's
the
cool, the Mole
Argent
Machine.
tournament back, but if we will, then Dark Iron Dwarfs will be everyone's favorite race. Volpera are trying hilariously to mimic this with their make camp and return
Campsite
to
thing,
camp
yeah.
ratios in creating extra Hearthstone places with a 1-hour cooldown. I mean, it's not really that cool at all. I'm not finding it really helpful when doing outdoor content
Yeah,
for
1
extensive
hour.
periods of time while needing to swap zones back and forth. No, I much prefer having a warm rug on a cold winter morning to keep my and maybe Zalatath's feet warm. I know you're watching this, Zally. My address is 22 MF's Hood. You know what to do.
Foxes are pets. Why do
What
we?
about the
Why do they
cool
put them on a
factor?
gear?
This is something
like
I see
people?
people not talking enough
What do you mean, Mally? You're asking a question that has an obvious answer. Furries. That's why. What kind of question is that?
about, but there are a few cool reasons to choose a race for a class. Like, let's say, lore reasons. You know lore, right? Well, not the actual lore. He hasn't been seen in Azeroth since Marcellin and Flame started to really make
Does he
some
still
noise
work at
over there on the
Blizzard?
YouTubes. But no, lore as in the story of the world. And I know what you are thinking. Flame, there is no lore until they bring in Amani as a playable race. And I totally agree
Right.
with you, you handsome and
Agreed.
beautiful viewer. We do need Amani as a playable race, more than we need a second patch for this expansion. But no. Lore as in role-playing in the world, even if only in your own head, as a class with a race choice that makes sense for the story. For instance, my Death Knight is an orc, because orcs were the first Death Knights ever created, and some of the best Death Knights are orcs, but not the
Some of the best Death Knights are orcs. What is he even talking about? Get that freaking shit out of here. Has he even seen the freaking Riders of the Apocalypse, who are considered to be the best Death? Does he know who those people? 3 of the 4 are humans. The hell is he talking about? Orcs are great. What the shit is he talking about?
best, am I right? We all know who the actual best ones there are, and that is humans. The vanilla race for all vanilla races, and likely the only race used as a rig by Blizzard when designing cool
That's
Death
right.
Knight transmog sets, because transmogs are the other reason to pick a cool race for your class. For instance, arguably the best and coolest looking warlock has to be undead. The transmogs look actually made for their
They are.
lanky and skinny frames, and their spellcasting
This is actually true. I mean, if you're an undead warlock, yeah, the gear just fits perfectly on you.
animations, male ones at least, and there are some of the most iconic ones in the entire game. Undead also make great mages, but mages make even greater gnomes. Anyway, I'm a supporter of unironic coolness and badassery, but even
That's
I
why
have
I
to
pick
admit
you.
that nothing has more warcrafty humor than a gnome mage shooting back-to-back machine gun waves of fireballs and arcane orbs.
True.
But for lore reasons, humans, blood elves, and Nightborn go the hardest. 3 reasons: Medivh, Kel'Thas, and Thalyssra. Whatever your feelings on those
Sure.
characters are, you have to admit they are absolutely the only characters
They're
of their
badass.
particular race representation with any significant impact upon the game's story and the world building altogether. Warriors are clearly orcs and taurens
Yeah.
because nothing
Because cool.
screams testosterone more than metric tons of muscle bringing down metric tons of metal down on your face or
Agreed.
the enemy's faces. That and these guys making everyone wonder why in the hell did warriors never get bloodlust. But also taurens getting big totems as cosmetic weapons to wield, just like in that one cinematic that
Right.
brought us all here. For paladins, I would definitely go with human for the lore vibes, but for protection paladin, I have to say no race has had better animations and combat aesthetics than Kultiran males. Say what you want, try it
Really?
once, and then come back to me to admit it in shame that I was right. My hunter choices will always be dwarves and trolls, because dwarves are clearly the best.
How can you not put Night Elf as hunter? I mean, that's one of the most obvious ones. Come on. Night Elf hunters, that is the classic Legolas trope, because you got to remember, Night Elves back in the Lord of the Rings days was the only elven race you could pick from. That was before this became World of Elfcraft, which it is now basically. Back then, you wanted to be an elf that has a bow, you had to play Night Elf hunter. That was the classic hunter for me.
Only rightful gun wielders of Azeroth, while trolls are just almost Amani, but not quite there. Seriously, Amani trolls have been my favorite race since Warcraft 2, and the only reason orcs took that spot is because Amani trolls stayed in Warcraft 2 as playable characters, and in that one raid turned dungeon in old classic WoW. and Zul'Aman now. None of it really matters because I still cannot roleplay as my forest troll, axe thrower, berserker.
WoW lore, not Lord of the Rings lore, Sam. Look, I mean, Lord of the Rings is a major reason why World of Warcraft ever became popular in the first place. It was like a perfect coalescence in time where Lord of the Rings took off and really brought this whole, nerd life of elves and orcs into the mainstream. And then you had World of Warcraft coming up behind them with this great game where you could play as elves and orcs and shit. So it just worked out. The whole reason why I picked up WoW was because of Lord of the Rings. I wanted to play in a fantasy world of orcs and elves and humans and shit. So what did I do? I was like, what's this game? World of Warcraft? That looks cool. Looks like Lord of the Rings stuff. And I started playing it. They go hand in hand. They're two different lores, but damn it, I will bet a lot on the fact that I think a lot of people started playing WoW because of their love for Lord of the Rings.
Demon Hunters win with Night Elf and it's not even close. Lore aside, oh praise the Illidan, please save us from the World Soul Saga, it's because of this transmog right here. Night Elves have bigger weapons because they have bigger ears, and these glaives have to be as big as they can possibly be.
True.
That is why Night Elves are best in slot. Undead wins at all casters, and Priest is no exception. They look cool. The Mog is cool, but really Alonce's Foul is the lore's coolest priest ever made.
For sure.
Sorry, Anduin, not even you are sure you are a priest anymore. And Kalia Menethil, also known as Budget Feel-Good Arthas, is not making any one of my lists. Rogue, clearly undead, because I too have watched and been ganked by an undead rogue 20 years ago that I remember to this day and hunt in the valleys of
Being ganked by an undead rogue is a rite of passage in WoW. It's happened to me.
Stranglethorn every waking hour of every waking day, hoping for that revenge to come back. But additionally, Goblin Rogue have the best stealth walking animation and thematically makes sense, while female Blood Elf are clearly the best. They kneel when standing still in stealth, which would be enough on its own if it wasn't for the actual best girl of midnight, the proper elf. Valera, stop pulling more delve packs on top of what we already have! Druids already have...
Valera's too hot to yell at. I used to yell at Bran all the time. I can't yell at Valera. She's too sexy.
Adults for the cool factor and Troll for the more exotic and jungle factor. But Haranir finally make an appearance here. I know everyone loves their shape-shifting forms. And if by shape-shifting forms you just mean the bear, then I agree. Just the bear. But the lore of Haranir Druids is actually one of the best, and I wholeheartedly support it. I will do an unexpected switcheroo and mention Amani once again because I will die on this hill until they make them playable. The main reason Amani would make some of the most awesomest of troll druids is because of Zul'Aman, the raid. Seriously, you need to watch this cinematic after our video right away. Basically. Shamans go hard with orcs because Thrall will always be bestest, but the Totem Kings will beat Taurens hands down. In terms of transmog and appearances, nothing says Shaman more like a spiritual totem that can house a family of 5 Operas strapped to your back, helping you channel the power of your ancestors. And lastly, monks. Pandaren. Pandaren clearly. Pandaren all the way, unless you want to look cool, and no transmog has made me swap a race faster than this Windwalker Samurai Mog that an orc male can make look absolutely delicious. Seriously, if you look at these and you are not considering swapping right now, I hope you enjoy your butterfly pajama trading pose mogs. Have fun. Also, have fun playing the most fun melee in the game. At least in our opinion, because that's just how subjective content creation works. No, seriously, click this and watch it. And maybe after, the Zul'Aman trailer. For the money!
Yeah, no, it's a good video overall. And I mean, yeah, I agreed with a lot of what he said here. Some of this video was really statistically based, like, stat-wise, this is the best race to play. But then there was a lot of aesthetic stuff in here, which I'm happy about, because honestly, that's why most people pick their race. And if you're going to sit here and tell me that Night Elves aren't iconic hunters, I mean, look at this classic piece of WoW art right here. This is literally the art that's showing right now from the music I'm playing. This is Night Elf Hunter. I mean, Night Elves and Hunters are the OGs of a perfect class race combo. So, come on now. That's perfect. All right, nice video overall, though, from Marcellia.